essentially, you know, you've got to remember that what's going on here is that you have the major corporation that's doing something, you know, like in the case of Kraft making the GE corn tacos, and then they hire a PR firm, and the PR firm hires BBI or something like that, and then BBI hires what they call subcontractors or cutouts. Subcontractors go along and look at trash. In the case of BBI in Washington and Greenpeace, one of the subcontractors was an active duty DC policeman. In other areas in DC where people who were former Baltimore and Maryland State Police were involved. And they referred to in these various documents, they would say, maybe we can get some help from our friends in the Baltimore police force. Or in another case, they said, if the shield, which means the badge, the police badge, doesn't get us in the door, then we'll have to, you know, think of something else. But so the suggestion here was that they were using active duty, you know, functioning police officers, kind of double dipping on the job, so to speak.
And what has been, I mean, the company has been disbanded, but were you able to reach those who have gone into other security firms who were involved here?
Yes, I was able to reach the major figure, Tim Ward, who's a former Maryland State policeman, and he said he didn't want to talk about it. In fact, all the people I talked to said they didn't want to talk about it, and with the exception of one woman who had been dating Tim Ward at the time and who described in some detail going on what amounted to a black ops. She was told to dress in black, and she went, and she said Ward was dressed in black, and they went down to the Greenpeace building in Washington, parked in an alley. She was told to stay in the truck. Ward got out, met with a couple of other guys. They talked on walkie-talkies, were gone for a while and came back with some trash. And then they returned home. It was sort of a comic event, I guess.
And, Jim, what has been Greenpeace's response and other groups like Lois Gibbs Group?
Well, the Lois Gibbs Group didn't know anything was going on, and in fact, I was just able to figure that out on the basis of checking addresses against work logs, the company work logs, which described how much trash had been collected, or at least I thought it was trash. It said something like 1 box, 2 bags, or I don't know, 2 bags, 2 boxes, 1 bag, at this address out in Virginia, and so I checked the address, and it was Lois Gibbs's home. The Greenpeace people at first...
And let's just say, Jim, let's just say Lois Gibbs, of course, is known for exposing toxic dangers at Love Canal, her group, the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice.
She would be something that any corporation, any, on the ball corporation would want to know where she was and what she was doing, put it like that. The Greenpeace people were very concerned because, among other things, I found, lists of all their employees with their Social Security numbers. I found some credit card numbers. I found lists of donors. I found descriptions of efforts to persuade various donors to give large amounts of money. I found at least one individual employee's personal bank account records, which was an original document. It was not a Xerox or anything. I found Xeroxes of checks made out from, community groups and so on to Greenpeace. For example, there was somebody I think in Alaska that had sent a check for $25. I found a Xerox of that, and on and on and on. So basically what's going on here is that the Social Security numbers, and I think in some cases credit card numbers and other personal details, which would permit identity theft, were violated, they're essentially on the street. So I think Greenpeace was quite concerned about that. And I imagine the other groups would be concerned about it as well.
Will there be any lawsuits here?
I don't know. I think that some of these groups were sort of dimly aware or maybe directly aware of this for some time and never did anything. Some people just want to forget it. and don't think it was going on. But it seems to me if it was going on for several years in the late 90s and into the 2000s, it's doubtful that it stopped. I mean, it's probably going on now. I don't know whether the same people are involved in this kind of stuff, but I wouldn't hesitate to think the same tactics and so on are used. Remember, this is the kind of thing that happened to Ralph Nader many, many years ago. And at that time, Bobby Kennedy was the one who brought it to the attention of Congress and to the public. I mean, is there anybody like that now in Congress? I don't know. I mean, would Barbara Boxer do something of this sort? I mean, would Henry Waxman? I just don't know.
Jim Ridgeway, what were you most surprised by in researching the story?
Well, I was surprised that these professional policemen, in fact, in one email, they discussed with one another what good cops they were. Some guy said, we're really good cops. And they proceeded to give the code word, the code name for their, private email address. So I was sort of surprised they put all this stuff on paper. I mean, and this wasn't like some, there were some, reports that were rehashed, on the basis of, reports, field reports. But there were some things that were just straight, emails that were sent back and forth, which contained, various revealing information. So I thought that was kind of surprising.
I was also interested in the whole client briefing document of Beckett Brown International. Can you describe that? Describe their seeking of documents, following money trails, ID activists, the chain of command.
Well, right. They were particularly interested. First of all, there were voluminous documents of this sort, these kind of like reports, and they appeared to have been circulated not just to the Beckett Brown clients, but to other PR companies. I mean, there were several different PR companies who appeared they all appeared to be operating as kind of a network, and they get these things. And I spoke to a woman who actually prepared some of these documents, and of course she denied, or not of course, she denied, doing any trash hunting or going into any offices, and referred to this as competitive research, which she said everybody did. Everybody does competitive research. But in some of these documents, which I took to, for example, Greenpeace, and showed Rick Hind, who is one of the people who's foremost in this country on chlorine, for example, on fighting the use of chlorine. I showed him a document that discussed upcoming events that he would participate in and that people at Greenpeace would participate in. And he said it was inconceivable that anybody would know about this unless they had directly penetrated Greenpeace's meetings. There was another document I saw which described the forming of a group called GE Alert. It listed, I don't know, maybe 30 names of people who were to meet or who had met to form this group. And then it described a meeting, or perhaps it was a series of meetings, but it was a meeting which was a confidential meeting of the principals in this group, of what they were going to do, their strategies, and how they were going to function. In one of the emails that I saw from BBI, one BBI guy to another, there was a description of how they said Ketchum has the ball, and that Kraft was the company who was making these tacos, these GE, what they referred to as glow-in-the-dark tacos. And they implied or suggested strongly that there was going to be an announcement or a press conference coming up, and it was going to look bad, for Kraft. And they wanted to find out what was going on and who was doing what to whom. So the suggestion here was that they penetrated GE Alert. Then there was a subsequent email which described an effort to penetrate the building where this press conference took place. And it told about how you get into the protected trash area, how the garbage people would take it out, you know, how a person could get into it. And then it described it how they didn't find anything from the 5th floor. Well, the 5th floor was the offices of an organization which held the press conference and which represented GE Alert in Washington. So, I mean, it's pretty detailed stuff. And, you know, having been in Washington a long time, I would say unfortunately, it's not unusual. I'm sure this goes on all the time.
Well, Jim Ridgeway, I want to thank you for being with us. Washington-based correspondent for Mother Jones magazine, the piece at motherjones.com called "Cops and Former Secret Service Agents Ran Black Ops on Green Groups." As